Do you need encouragement to turn tragedies into your own triumphant life story? If so, this podcast is for you. Listen to powerful guests who have persevered through challenges so you can gain strength to build your championship life. The host of Professor of Perseverance podcast, Dr. James Purdue.
All right, let's go on and get started here today. Hey, our guest today, man, this is going to be good. Every time we talk about fulfillment, transformation, going from the bad side to the good side, I mean, inspiring people, passing that forward, pay it forward, pay something out today, somewhere along the line, 100 years from now, someone's going to be quoting you they've heard someone else say. All right, so today our guest, he said he's gone from an arrogant mob lawyer. Now, this could be interesting. Here's some of this. During the Miami's Cocaine Cowboy era to a mindfulness mentor and author. Now, that's what we're here. He said that he weaves his story through the themes of transformation, resiliency, and finding fulfillment. All right, welcome to the show. It's going to get started here with Bob Martin.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's nice to be here.
Hey, it's I guess it's then the dreaded opposite of not being here, I guess. And we can look at that in different ways. So, no, I'm glad you're here. Appreciate you reaching out to get hold of me and to do this. This is going to be, again, I'm all about this transformation. I mean, we all go through something. We all been involved in something, whether we brought it on ourselves or it just happens. And it's how we deal with it is how it's going to come out. All right. So,
Yep.
All right, Bob, I'm not going to hang in there much longer with you. I want you to go and get started, and I'm interested to find out what's going on here.
Yeah. And I love what you just said about it's not about what happens to you, it's about what you do with it. And that's just so much of everything that I've learned. Because I mean, in life, there's a lot of pain, and there's nothing you can do about it. Because I mean, you're gonna break an arm, that hurts. Your girlfriend's gonna break up with you, and that hurts. And you're gonna lose a parent, and that hurts. And it's just a lot of stuff that happens in life. But it's what you do with it. And I guess the good news, what I've learned, is that it's not about like just happenstance. Like you can just say that, like it's what you do with it. It's really like dealing with it kind of like skillfully, like with skill. And just like anything else, you can learn like skills. Like you can learn how to deal with things better. And a lot of that comes through the good fortune that you might have in having good teachers along the way. And I would say if there was anything that my story is about, it's about having good teachers.
Yeah. That's we've got good teachers, and of course we can learn a lot from the bad teachers in life through those too as well.
Too.
Okay, to learn to avoid those type after you've been approached by a couple of them. But also, what's those saying? Life is the best teacher. And so we learn from experience. Hey, now what I mentioned a minute ago about it's not what happens matters, it's how you deal with it. I learned it from a man, W. Mitchell. If you get a chance, Bob, look up W. Mitchell. He was back in the late 60s in a motorcycle accident. He got 75% of his body burnt in the motorcycle accident. And after doing all the skin grafts and everything, he got better. I can't remember, it's 3 or 5 years later, he was learning to fly one of those 2-seat planes, two small planes. And he'd come down to land, someone going right. He had some people in with him and went to go down to land. And they said he bounced on the runway a little bit. Everybody got out. But when it was time for him to get out, he broke his back in it.
Oh.
So he was already burnt, 50%, 60% of his body, then he gets paralyzed.
Oh,
And so, yeah, he talks about it's not what happens to you, it matters what you do about it. So
yeah,
that's his big thing. So, hey,
yeah,
Debbie, I hope you're listening,
yeah,
buddy.
yeah. I hope he is. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the story of the Dalai Lama. You know,
Hmm.
The Chinese, they came in, they invaded Tibet, and the Dalai Lama, of course, he was the spiritual and religious leader of his country. And the Chinese, they're kind of anti-religion, and they come in, and he gets exiled, and so he and his troop, they got to leave his country, and they got traipse on down to India, where he's living in exile, and they burnt like his sacred books, a big bonfire, and they tore down his temples, and they put up shopping malls, instead of the temples.
Uh-huh.
I mean,
Yeah,
you think about that. You see your whole culture, the whole culture that you yourself was responsible for. You see it being ripped apart. Somebody asked him one time, they said, how can you stay so cheerful when all of this stuff has happened to you? And he said, the Chinese have taken so much from me. They've taken my culture, my country. They make me live in exile. Why should I allow them to take my happiness as well?
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So,
So,
there, I don't know, maybe 20 years ago, I saw something, and then it was again about um, no one else should be able to steal your joy. It's how you react to them. You
mhm.
know, well, I'm thinking, I understand what they're saying there, but
Yeah.
I'm thinking if someone smacks me across the face, I'm not going to be too happy about that.
Right. Right.
But I do understand the concept. You know, uh, it's you that's going to provide the positivity and the happiness in your life, not what's around you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I hope it's okay that we keep talking about this, because I like what we're saying,
oh
and
no,
it makes it.
we're going to do you. We're going to do
Yeah.
you. Yeah, whatever, however you want to do this,
All right.
I'm all in it.
Because I'm thinking about two things right now. One of
Yeah,
them
go
is
ahead.
I'm thinking about my son. So my son was he was in his third freshman year. Got it?
There you go. I got you. I got you.
He was in his third freshman year of college, right?
Now,
And,
not to try to beat you or one up you, but I had a friend that was in his third, seventh grade year. Not college,
not college.
seventh
Right,
grade, third year, and eventually, of course, dropped out.
right. So he was in a community college, and he heard about this program where you could become a social worker in 5 years. It was a 5 year program instead of a 6 year program, and so he figured he could make up a year. So he said, "Dad, could I try this?" And I go, "Well, yeah, if they'll take you." And he goes, "Well, I'd like to take a look at it." So I went down to where he was and got with him. We went over to this college called Barry College in Miami, and he went in and he walked around, and I'm watching him, and he's looking around, and he goes in and he talks to the dean of the school. It's one of those small colleges, it's not a big
Hmm.
college. He comes out from talking to the dean, and he had his hands on his hips, and he's looking around, and he looks around, and he says to me, "I can do this. I can do this." And from that moment on, when he said, "I can do this," when
Yeah.
he got it, when he felt that inside, from that moment on, nothing stopped him. Now he's a licensed clinical social worker, and he's got his own therapy practice, and he's doing just fine.
There you go. Awesome.
So, it
Part of
really,
yeah, part of I can do this is more than just saying it. You got to believe it.
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
and then of course as well to take the actions
right,
towards it. But yeah, we've heard plenty of people, hey, I can do this, and then they get bored with it, they decide to do
right.
something different. But yeah, once you like you said, clicks and gets focused in, yeah.
Yeah, you can do that. Yeah, that was something. And then one other thing I just want to say. So I teach meditation, and now I'm so excited that the university here at Elon has given me a 2 credit course where kids can really take a meditation course and they can get college credit for it. And so at the end of the course, I ask them if they'll write a little, a reflection on how the
Hmm.
course was. So, like during the course, you say a lot of stuff and you show your PowerPoints and you do your little things and teach a lot of techniques and stuff. And you say a lot of stuff, and some stuff, you don't even remember that you said it. You just, give an example or you say something. And there's 15 kids in the class. And out of that 15 kids, 13 of them all had this one thing that I said was
Oh,
in their reflection. There was this one thing I said, and I swear I don't even remember saying it.
uh-huh.
But they said, when you said, you don't have to say, I gotta do this, you can say, I get to do this.
Mm,
Right? I don't
yeah.
have to go to work tomorrow. I get to go to work tomorrow. I said it. I said it kind of offhand, but somehow that hit 13 of them so
Yeah.
hard that they remembered it afterwards. So you never know. It's funny how you never know. It's something you're going to do or something you're going to say, just going to have this really profound effect on somebody else. And if it wasn't for that reflection, I would never would have known that.
Yeah. That's pretty
Yeah.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why we should approach life is we get to do this because how many people in other countries don't get to do it?
Right.
And when you say I have to do it, now it sounds like a chore
Yeah.
or someone's making me do it whether I want to do it or not. So
Right.
yeah, when you get the opportunity or when you get the permission, you get the I'm allowed to do this.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, because there's so many people that don't get permission or allowed to
Right.
do it.
Right.
So, hey, you talking about the colleges? Uh, where I live, we got a community college, two-year college, and I remember this one instructor, and I ended up coaching his son in baseball years later. But one day he was talking to the class, and he said, he said the only difference between our 2-year community college and big Vanderbilt, Vanderbilt, like yeah. So he says there's only two differences, and he says Vanderbilt, the tuition costs more than going here, and he said then this is funny. He said, and they spell their graffiti on their bathroom walls correctly. so so he said that's the only two difference between that community college and Vanderbilt.
Yeah, right, right. No, I hear you.
So,
It's
so
yeah,
yeah.
it's all about your attitude and how you look at things. There's there's a community college here in town, and have you ever heard of
Yeah.
mock trial competition?
Yeah.
Like they have it at high school, and they actually do like a trial of some
Yeah.
kind, and the kids get up and they play the lawyers and they play the witnesses, and they have these competitions. And usually, the colleges, the big colleges like North Carolina State University and Elon University, all the 4-year colleges, they all have these mock trial teams. And our little community college over here, they got a mock trial team, and they get no resources. They don't have it. They don't have any funding.
Yeah.
They don't have any money. All they got is their gumption and their courage. And these kids, man, I tell you, they play that game like their life depends on it. And they came back. Now they didn't win the regional. They didn't because they were up against all of these,
Yeah.
4-year schools. But they placed second. They placed second in the regionals.
Wow.
And I'm just so proud of them.
David and Goliath.
David and Goliath, right? Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So oh, I forgot what I was going to say. You goes on. Oh, I was going to mention I'm too old for it, but I wished when I was younger. I mean, to say to it, I can do it anytime I want to, I guess. But I wished I would have studied more constitutional law I mean, I'm not a lawyer or anything. I got a doctorate in education, but I've been seeing more and more. And I don't know how much you know about me, but I got my neck broke playing football. I'm paralyzed in a
Oh.
wheelchair, and so I wished I would have took my time, part of my time now, to be more of an advocate with the Constitution for other people with disabilities. And I know I can still be an advocate, but you would still have to know some of the laws to be able to know what you can do and not say. But I wish when I was younger, I would have done more of that then.
Especially now, if you know what I mean.
I do know now.
Because
there was two stories, and it happened. I'm in Tennessee, and it happened just right above us in Kentucky, and both incidents, the men had dementia, and the police treated them, I mean, tackling them on the ground, thinking they're drunk, and I know they're not medical people, but why do you have to go to the extreme? You can tell something's wrong, so why do you have to treat them like that? So it's yeah, I wish, no more than that.
Because now they're cutting off funding, and I still work in social services court, where kids are taken away because they're abused, neglected, and the like. And those, I mean, a lot of these parents, they're just not skillful. Nobody ever taught them how to be a human being. So they can't deal with conflict very well, and they can't deal with anger very well, and the like. And you just look at them, and the funding, everybody wants, to get them the resources and get them the skills that'll help them be a better parent, but the money's just not there. And so, but we could get off onto politics right now for lots going on.
I tell you what, I try not to dig much in that because it gets my blood pressure going a little too much. So I'd rather be on the happy side here.
Right.
All right. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go.
But I'm all into this. Doing something now that's going to help somebody else years from now. And again, we're never going to know anything about it. But again, Bob, they're talking about this internet. We're on this internet right now, and they claim this podcast is going to be there forever now. Okay. So which means theoretically, possibly, somebody's going to find this talk we're having here 100 years from now, and somebody's going to get something out of it.
It's true. There's an old Chinese saying that true love is a man who plants a tree knowing that he will never sit in its shade.
Oh, it's nice. I like it.
Mm-hmm.
That is, because they're going to grow and may or may not be able to, like I said, be underneath that shade. To be able to reap the benefit of it. Somebody else will later on. Yeah. So, hey, now, remembering you mentioned Miami down there.
Right.
You're in Miami?
No, I'm in North Carolina now. I had to leave Miami.
I hear you.
I ran into a little difference of opinion with my mob clients, so to speak.
I got you.
Thought it
I
was
just say I was resident for Miami for like 4 months. After I got to my spinal cord injury, a few years later, of course, I'm trying to find the cure to walk again, and I went to like 18 different rehabs in 5 years trying to find that cure. And one of them was I was in the Miami project with Bonacani.
Right.
With them, and at that time, I had improved more than anyone that went through their research program. Now, again, that was 30 years ago, but 40 years ago. Woo. Nope. So, so it's been what the kids today say, it's been a minute, but that's been time. Miami, boy, it's a country of its own right there.
Yeah, it was.
So, all right. Now I'm interested in, let's get into this a little bit here about them cowboy days, Cocaine Cowboys.
Yeah. So just give you a little bit of history about how the Cocaine Cowboys came about. So most of your audience, I suppose, they're not old enough to remember President Carter and what he did during his period of time. Janet Reno was the DA. Later on, she was the AG, or Attorney General for Bill Clinton. But at that time, she was like the district attorney for Miami. Anyway, during those days, President Carter made a declaration. And he said, if you have family in Cuba right now, I will allow them entry into the United States if you can get them here. And so a lot of the Cuban families rented or hired fishing boats to go the 90 miles over to Cuba to pick up their relatives and bring them back, because Carter said he'd let them all in. Well, when they got there, what they didn't expect was that Castro and his police and his army, they marched all of the criminals out of the Cuban jails and all the mental institutions and all the crazies. And at gunpoint, they forced these captains, along with mom or dad they were bringing back. They also brought back 40 criminals.
Yeah, this is our crazy uncle, and then his brother. Yeah. I get you.
And 40 criminals from the jail.
Yeah.
That they did know. And that was, and so they had to.
Oh, that's what I meant when you was talking about didn't know. I'm talking about, they're adopting them. They're at gunpoint making them adopt them as the crazy uncle, as
Right. They didn't even have to pretend. They just forced them on. And then when they got here, you remember, if you saw the movie Scarface, they had made like a penned up dormitory underneath the the highway, the overpass of the highway. They made these big, long housing fenced in areas where they put all these Cuban refugees in. And what they didn't know is that Castro and the Russian agents were handing out submachine guns and pistols to all these criminals that were paroled out there, like Scarface. And so Miami had a crime wave that was just crazy. I mean, there were so many homicides that we had to break up the major prosecutors. There had to be 4 prosecutors on duty to go to homicide scenes every single day.
Wow.
There would be like 3 or 4 different homicide scenes that had to be reviewed. Anyway, so that's when I was working at the DA's office, and I progressed through the DA's office pretty good. Got up to consumer frauds and, more important, white collar crime.
Yeah.
And there's this thing called RICO, Racketeering Influence Corrupt Organization. And so we did a RICO case against the mob, and we hit him for $72 million, civil case. And so I left the office a little after that, and within a couple of weeks, a member. Now, when you say the mob in Miami, you're talking Italians, Colombians, Peruvians, Cubans, Haitians, Anyway, but this fellow was out of the Italian, the Gambino mob. His name, I'll call him Johnny. He came to see me. And basically what he said was, we got pretty good lawyers and you were able to beat them. So you got to be pretty good. So we want to start sending you clients. So I pretty much started working for the mobs.
Yeah. I hear you.
And it was a big career boost because, I mean, there was a $10,000 limit on how much cash you could take without reporting it to the federal government. And each one of these clients that walked in that were referred by these guys, they all walked in with $9,500 in cash. So I was making money hand over foot.
Yeah.
And I was going out and hanging out with them, and it is the Cocaine Cowboy days, so use your imagination. And those were the discotheque and chrome and glass and all that. And so quite frankly, my personal life was kind of falling apart. And in my professional life, I the top tier. Everybody knew me, respected by the courts. But on a private level, things were all falling apart. And I was seeing a therapist, and um, I really came to an important crossroads about what to do. I asked him, and you wouldn't believe it. He starts throwing coins on the table. I asked him, should I do this, or should I refinance the house, or what should I do? And he starts throwing coins. And I got, he opens up a book and he shows it to me, and the chapter title of the book is Retreat. And, so I'm paying him to be a therapist. I curse him up, I walk out. But, the advice was good advice. And so I pulled back a little bit from some of those excessive behaviors.
Yeah.
And started getting my life back together. And so I went and I asked him what that all was. Turned out it was a Taoist, Tao, the Tao. It was a Taoist practice called the I Ching. And so I said, well, what's Taoism? Turns out that my therapist was the English language editor for a 72nd generation. Think about this, handing wisdom down for 72 generations.
Yeah.
A Taoist master from the Shaolin Temple, Kung Fu, Tai Chi, all that stuff. And so this was his number one student, my therapist.
Yeah.
And Master Ni, his name was Watching Ni. He came to Miami and I met him. And I am sure that you've run into some people in your life that just bowl you over. Like the moment you meet him, you think, I just want to know what this guy knows.
Oh yeah.
And this is one of those guys. And so I got to study under Master Ni for years. And I guess the best thing about what did he teach me? So we asked him once, said, why do they call you master? Why are you master? And he always used to answer everything with a little chuckle,
Yeah.
he said, because I have mastered life. And he chuckled and he walked away, and we're going, mastered life. What's that mean? What's that mean? So when we cornered him, he looked at us and he said, you have mastered life when you can have the smallest impact, not the smallest, you can interfere with things the least and have the greatest impact.
Yeah.
And I go, oh, okay. So how do you do that? He goes, well, that's the teaching, that's the learning. And so, he taught us that path. The Tao actually means the way. And so he taught us the way, to learn how to go with the flow, which you have to understand what the flow is. A lot of people say, oh, I go with the flow, I'm going to float downstream. Yeah, that's cool if the stream is calm, but what happens if it's white water?
That's right.
What happens if you're coming to a waterfall? What happens if you got a flood and it's taking your house with it? I mean, what if it's a thunderstorm? What if it's a gentle rain? So the stream going with the flow can be 1,000 different things. Going with the flow means figuring out what the flow is, and then what is the best way to be in that flow.
Yeah.
And so the best example I could give for this would be if you're out in the ocean and you want to swim to shore, you know that the tide's going in and the tide's coming out, right?
Yeah.
Well, when it's going in, it's in your favor, right? So you want to take advantage of that. So when it's going towards shore, you swim like heck. But you also know that it's going to go against you. So when it goes against you, you don't want to exhaust yourself by fighting it, because that's just going to be wasted energy. And you don't want to just give up because it'll sweep you back out to sea. you have to give it just enough energy to hold your position, right? And
Yeah.
then you wait, and then it turns around, it goes towards the shore. You swim like heck, and then you wait, and then you swim like heck, and then you wait. Now, if you could do that when you get to shore, you will have interfered with the natural flow the least, and you will have had the greatest impact. In other words, you will have gone with the flow,
Yeah.
adjusting yourself to it. So sometimes people are willing to listen to you, other times they're not. Sometimes people need a little pushing, sometimes they need to be left alone. Sometimes you need to really get all your resources together, but not attack yet. But sometimes it's time to move forward, and push. Sometimes it's time to hold back. So getting a feeling for what the right time is and what works best and how to work best within that, that is all the wisdom that Master Nee,
Yeah. Yeah.
tried to teach us. Yeah.
So as you're doing that, I'm envisioning with something I've read about Bruce Lee,
Uh-huh.
and he was talking about water, how the water works, and how the stones get smooth and
Mm-hmm.
rough, and I don't remember the whole thing off the top of my head, but as you're talking, I was remembering part of that.
Right, right.
Yeah.
What he said was that nothing can stand up to water.
Yeah.
If it meets an obstacle, it will flow around it. It won't contest it. It won't
Yeah.
fight with it. It just flows around it. And if that doesn't work, it'll build up and it'll flow over it. And if that doesn't work, it'll dig away at the foundation and go under it. And if that doesn't work, it'll seep through it. So it will adjust itself
Mm-hmm.
to dealing with the obstacle in the most effective way, but without any contention, without any anger. It'll just do it.
Yeah.
So be like water.
That's right. So
Be
yeah,
like water.
it made me remember that
Hmm.
when you were talking like that. So um, I like watching. I've been watching some old Perry Mason stuff, and they'll have these Chinese guys with, and then of course they're answering everybody's questions with a question,
Uh-huh.
and it's I mean profound answers, but it's their question with the question,
Hmm.
and I'm thinking, man, I don't have that in me, but that's pretty cool. I think
Yeah,
that
yeah,
you
yeah.
can sit back and do that off the top of your head, and it's pretty good. So, all right, Bob. Here, let's tell me a little bit about your books here. Yeah, I see two of them you got.
Uh-huh.
Here's one says "I am the way,"
Hmm.
and so tell us a little bit about this.
Okay, so this is nonfiction. So y'all learned that I didn't grow up with much religion. The first thing I had was Taoism. And then when I came to North Carolina, I kind of had Buddhism, and then I got into meditation. So most of my religion was Eastern stuff, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So I wound up marrying a, believe it or not, she now calls herself a recovering Southern Baptist
There,
Bible literalist, right?
there you go.
This is somebody who believes that the world is 4,000 years old, that Noah's Ark really happened, that the Garden of Eden is a true story. I mean, she believes everything literally from the Bible, and she is a. I mean, I love her to the ends of the earth. She is a saint. She is the kind of person that if she sees somebody in need, she'll just move in and do whatever needs to be done. And if anybody, pats her on the back about it afterwards, she won't even understand why she's being patted on the back, because to her, it
It's
was
just
just obvious
yeah,
that
that's
that needed to be done. I mean,
second nature.
second nature to her.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
She says how she is. So she thought my stuff was all weird. I mean, it's just weird stuff.
yeah.
And I thought her stuff was real rigid. We didn't really, talk much about that. And it was funny. One time she was going to church, and she was real sad. And I asked her why she was so sad. And she goes, well, I love you so much. And I really hate it that you're not going to go to heaven with me.
Oh,
Because in
okay.
her belief system, I had to be
Yep.
saved.
Yep.
And I would say to her, well, I really hate it. You're not going to be reincarnated with me. And she'd slap me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, I started asking her more questions about, what the lessons were that she was learning about how to live life. And every time she told me one of these, I would think, well, Lao Tzu said something like that in, chapter 31 of the Tao Te Ching. And I'd go and I'd look, and there it was, the same thing.
Mhm.
And the more I looked in it, the more that I found that these things were the same. I even found and learned that things like Jesus's parables, the parable of throwing seeds on,
Yeah.
sometimes they land on rocks, sometimes they land
Yep.
in fertile land. That same exact parable are in the Buddha Sutras. The parable of the prodigal son, the exact same story is in the Buddha Sutras. The exact same story. I mean, the kid, takes his father's inheritance, goes off
Yeah.
and spends it, comes back, has a party, brother's pissed off. Same exact story.
Yeah.
So I started looking at it and I said, this is all the same stuff. It's kind of almost a little bit woo-wee. It's so much the same stuff. It's almost like it brings you to a place where you got to believe that something like the Holy Spirit just enveloped the earth and inspired everybody, with the same goodness. So I started taking the writings of Lao Tzu, which are in something called the Tao Te Ching, which is the main book of Taoism. It's 81 little one-page chapters.
Yeah.
And I started thinking, because I fancy myself a bit of a poet, can I possibly turn this around and write it in Christian language? Would there be a way to say the same thing so that it's consistent and it's okay with the Bible? So I started playing with that. And every time I'd read one to her, she goes, that's really cool. And then we could have a conversation. So it acted kind of like a Rosetta Stone between the East and the West.
Yeah.
It was a way of translating. And she finally came to a place where she said, your stuff's not that weird. And I said, yeah. And I think Jesus was really a Buddhist priest. She goes, I'm not going to go that far.
There you go.
I'm not going to go that far. But so I finally finished all 81 chapters, and a publisher heard about it and he goes, we're really interested in your work. We'd like to publish it. And so it turns out that it is, in effect, a Christian devotional based on the writings of 3,000 years ago in the East.
Wow, that'd be interesting. Yeah.
And it has the original text in the back appendix.
Yeah.
So you could read like chapter 5 and see what that says. And then you could go back and see what they said, 3,000 years ago and kind of compare them.
Yeah, that's good. That's
awesome. That's what that is. Yeah.
Yep.
And I get letters from folks now all over the country that tell me things like they left the church because they couldn't stand the my way or the highway. Or a lot of people, especially gay people, were hurt badly, by different judgments of the church.
Oh, yeah.
And they left the church, but then they also left their spirituality. And they write me and they say, this is a way for me to reconnect, with my sense of something bigger than me without having all of the dogma of organized religion. So that's what that's about.
Yeah, our Bible says thou shall not be the judgment and everything. But I've noticed a lot of people in church do a lot of judging.
Yeah.
I've noticed that before, even though the Bible's telling them we're not supposed to. So I'm one of them. And I don't know all religion out there. I don't know all of them, but for what I do know, it seems like we're all praying to the same God, just in a different way. Okay,
Right.
That's what it seems to me. And what you're explaining right now, like you said, the same exact story was in it, and it's telling me that we're going for the same thing. We just got different ways of getting there.
Yeah.
So
I'll give you a really good example talking about judging. In the Bible, it says, judge not lest you be judged. Right?
yes,
Well, Lao Tzu, in writing the Tao Te Ching, what he says is the more that you judge people, the more you are sure that other people judge. Right? Because
yeah,
you figure since I figure you think not your experiences are different and you
yeah,
have different, but your operation of your brain is pretty much like mine. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to talk to each other, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So if I got a lot of judging, oh, that person, I don't like that, their underwear is showing, or I don't like that person, because he's got too big a beard or
yeah,
whatever, right? If I'm doing that a lot, then I'm figuring that other people do it a lot too. That means that I go around life feeling like I'm being judged all the time. And that's not a happy way to live. So, what
yeah,
Lao Tzu says is try to work on judging less, and you will wind up feeling less judged. And therefore, you'll be happier in your life.
yeah.
So,
I can I can
there it is.
see
Huh?
I can see that. I can understand that because to me, if I'm worried about everybody else and what they're doing, then I got to be thinking, what are they thinking about me?
Right?
Because same thing, same thing as you got stuff hidden in your skeletons in your closet now, but I don't want you opening my closet,
Right, right, right.
you know,
Exactly,
and see my
exactly.
skeletons. So
Right,
yeah, I can see someone if they're that judgmental, they got to be worrying what everybody else is thinking of them.
right.
God, they
And
got to be.
and then they wind up being like I know some women in my church. They actually get up a half an hour before their husbands and go in the bathroom and get all fussed up and put their makeup on so that when the husband wakes up, he sees them looking good. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Really? Really? What kind of is that? That just doesn't seem like a very happy life to me.
I saw a no, I wouldn't think so either. For her,
Yeah, no, for her.
for her trying to please the man to look good. But I remember hearing a, a video or there's somebody, I guess, comedian doing it, whatever, but someone played on the video, and he was talking about he just got married and there's a strange woman in his bed, and it was his wife without the makeup, and where he slept overnight, he woke up and saw his strange woman in bed, and he'd called 911 about this night. The woman in the bed is not his wife, and they said, and finally they figured out what's going on and said, hey, well, just go back to bed. Wake up, about an hour later, and your wife will be there. And she had got up, like you said, and got all makeup on and cleaned up and went be so
Yeah.
all right, Bob, let's now what's his second book?
Oh, the second book. Second book is this is a
Children of
novel.
Abraham.
This is a novel, and this is really I'm really excited about this because I self-published this book when I first saw. I didn't know anything about publishing. I know
Yeah,
the first thing about publishing. I got eaten up by the sharks. I spent a fortune on it. Didn't get nothing done. That's a whole story in itself
yeah,
about self-publishing. But so I eventually wound up printing about 3 or 4 thousand copies, sold them over the internet, and that was in 2008, and it's been kind of sitting there. Now the interesting thing, okay, so when this book that was just published by Innovative Inc., which is a national wild subsidiary of Barnes and Noble, which is
mm-hmm,
one of the Big Ten. So when they picked that up and published that traditionally, they asked me, do I have anything else? I said, well, I've got this book. Well, let me see it. So she read it. It was 94,000 words. She goes, if you can kick it down to 65,000 words, we'll print it. We'll publish it. I
yeah,
said, what? What? No, I did it. I did it.
You
I got it. I got it. I
you
did it.
said, let me delete the last 3 chapters.
Yeah, right. It's hard. It's like
Oh,
cutting
I
the
know
arms
it.
off your own baby. You know.
Exactly. Oh, yeah, I know it. I know it. When I went to defend my dissertation, a friend of mine, he'd already gone through it before me. And he says, James, I know it's your baby, but when they tell you to do something, you do it. Because look, if you don't listen to them, they're not going to approve it.
Yeah,
So,
right.
yeah.
It's
So,
hard. But I got it down, and now she's publishing it, and they're publishing it. It's coming out. It's going to be coming out. So the story is this, um, and the crazy part. Well, I'll tell you what the story. The story is this is back after 9/11. You know, when all of those wars were going on,
yeah.
and everybody was running around killing people in the name of God. And I kept thinking, you know, and look, I don't know if God speaks in English. I
Yeah.
don't know if God thinks like we think. And I mean, oh, that's way above my pay grade. But for the moment, if God was able to look down and see what was going on this planet, he might just say to himself, yeah, not exactly what I intended for you guys.
Yeah.
Not really. So maybe it would be time for him to send us a message and say, yeah, you're really not doing what I intended you to do. How could he do that? So I brought God down by having messages, strange, weird messages showing up on the ticker tape in Times Square and on the bottom of your TV screen. And it starts out in the book, in the novel, it starts out as a big hoax. Everybody thinks it's a big hoax.
Yeah.
You know, you're all my children, God. You know, all of your actions have consequences, God. You know, courage is really being able to forgive, God. All these messages. And over time, though, they realize they're coming out of a black hole. If you see it, if you speak French and I speak Spanish, I see it in my own native language. So it's getting more and harder to believe that it's not
Yeah.
something. But in the meantime, I mean, this is not really a religious book. It's really a book about faults and who can redeem their faults. So I've got one fellow who is a Jewish congressman from New York who's a sex addict.
Uh-oh.
I've got a really nice. I've got a guy who was a football player. I was a football player too. You were too. I broke an ankle. You broke your neck. But this guy broke his ankle and came back to his Harlem neighborhood, you know, as a broken hero.
Mm-hmm.
There's another one of an arrogant lawyer. There's another guy who's a mafioso, and their lives all intersect. It's kind of like Crash meets the Temple, you know. All everybody's story intersects.
Yeah.
As these messages from God keep coming, and the whole question is, you know, who can redeem and who doesn't, and what effect would it have on the world, and you know, does it solve problems or make problems? But it was a lot of fun writing because it put up a lot of, you know, you see people. I got into a discussion, and we don't want to get too much into politics, but still, I had a discussion with this person who claimed to be this profound Christian, who was talking about how the Bible tells us to love the outsider and how to open our arms and welcome the outsider, and how it says so. And he was quoting chapter and verse and everything else. And I said, well, how come, you know, you're all in favor of deporting all these immigrants? And
Mm-hmm.
it was like he completely changed, his whole personality changed in a moment. They come here and it's illegal and they're committing
Yeah.
crimes. And there was so much anger and so much judgment. You know, I couldn't even wrap my head around it. I said, like, what's that all about? How do you put so those things, they kind of, the question, you know, that religion and human frailty, the connection of those two and how they connect and intersect was just something that's really, it was interesting, and I got to play with that in the book. But the
Yeah.
really interesting thing about it is the way that the book opens. And remember, I wrote this in 2008 the first time.
Yeah.
And the way that the book opens is going to be published in 2025 is that Captain Nadav of the Israeli Defense Forces is flying a jet on a bombing mission into the Gaza Strip, and he's radioing in asking how much the collateral damage is going to be by taking out these Hamas fighters that
Yeah.
they identified in the middle of a marketplace.
Oh, wow.
I mean, that's the opening scene in the book,
Yeah.
which could have been taken out of yesterday's headlines.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like you had a pre-emission there.
And it was happening then in '08 anyway. It was still happening. It hasn't
Yeah.
changed. It was
Wow.
in all this time.
It's amazing.
Amazing.
Bob, you're amazing, man. I appreciate you coming on. I just feel the positivity and everything, the resiliency in you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I appreciate that you're out there doing your best to get the next person, and again, 100 years from now, person fired up about life. And to me, the main thing is take it easy and do the best. Great show. Remember Risky Business?
Yeah.
And then Joel said he learned to say "what the fuck," not to get overwhelmed and everything.
Right.
A little short story. I was at one of my college classes doing math, and since my hands don't work right, I can't keep up with the guy writing this stuff on the board and all the math stuff. But fortunately, I'm a math person. I like numbers. So I'd sit there the whole class with my arms crossed, but I'm working the things in my head. One woman beside me, she's writing everything down. And when it comes test time, I'd get A or B. She'd get a D or an F. And she come up to me and she said to me, she says, "I hate you." And I said, "What?" I said, "You don't know me well enough to hate me like that." She said, "You sit over there with your arms crossed. You don't write anything down. I'm writing everything down, and I'm barely passing this class, and you're acing it." And I'm going, "Ma'am, I tell you, you need to do like I do." I said, right before I come to class, I take a Valium and 2 shots of whiskey, and then I say, "What the fuck?" If I fail the class, woo, then I fail it, and all I do is retake it again and do the best I can. I said, other than that, it's no big deal to me.
That's right.
And at the end of the semester, she came up to me and thanked me for putting it not to get so overwhelmed about what's going on, that if she did fail it, she can retake the class. She'll be ahead of the class because already going through it.
Right.
And she says, "I want to thank you for teaching me to say what the fuck."
Yeah.
And so, stuff that you're talking about, don't get so bogged down with everything. Well, again, we've got more in common than we do differences, but everybody wants to argue about what the difference is.
Yeah. Have you ever seen Carl Sagan's little clip Carl Sagan did called A Pale Blue Dot?
I don't know if I've seen that.
Okay, check that one out. It's a 5-minute video on YouTube called A Pale Blue Dot. And what he talks about is how this Earth, from the far reaches of Voyager, when you look back at this Earth, it's nothing but a pale blue dot caught in a beam of sunlight.
Yeah.
And in the overall perspective of things, man, it's just insignificant.
Yeah.
You know?
All right. Well, Bob, I really appreciate getting to meet you, buddy. So
you too.
We'll go from here. Hey, now we're going to give you websites, how to find your books, and any other social media you want.
So everything's in one spot, and there's a couple of freebies, free downloadable ebooks that I've written about meditation and how to get started, and lots of resources and everything about my books. It's all in one spot. And
I've already been at your site once. I already looked at it and saw the freebie. All right, you go ahead.
And it's called awiseandhappylife.com.
All right, there you go. And I'll put it in the show notes to make it easier for people to find it as well.
I appreciate it.
All right, Bob, we know there's people hurting and struggling today. If you can leave us with a positive message, that's going to be a blessing for everybody.
Well, I always there's a book out, and the book says it all. Name of the book says, "Don't sweat the small stuff," and it's all small stuff.
Once we get through and look and reevaluate our life as we're getting older, it's all small.
It's all
So,
small stuff.
yeah. So that's a great, great little word to put together. All right, Bob. Hey, appreciate you being here. Thank you. Anybody else? Hey, share to someone. We've had some laughter. We've got fired up today, and let them enjoy this with us. And again, Bob, 100 years from now, somebody's going to catch us and they're going to say, Bob, you're a good man. Bob, I love your positivity. So, all right,
Thanks.
everybody else, I'm Dr. James Purdue, the professor of perseverance. Do something today, tomorrow, something next week that's going to help you persevere past your paralysis.